A full-scale war between the United States and Iran carries catastrophic global stakes. A blockade in the Strait of Hormuz chokes the world's oil supply, while targeted strikes on submarine cables can sever international internet connectivity in an instant. Yet, if you look back at the 1970s, you find a completely different reality. The United States, Israel, and Iran were absolute strategic allies. Iran, under the rule of the Shah, was flush with American weapons and Western investment. So how does a country go from being Washington's most valuable Middle Eastern asset to its primary target almost overnight? The answer begins far away from religious ideology. It starts with a multi-decade chess match over the control of oil reserves and the absolute necessity of keeping the global economy running on the US dollar. In 1951, Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh looked at the immense wealth being pumped out of his country by British companies and made a fateful decision. He nationalized Iranian oil, attempting to return the profit to the Iranian people. That decision cost him his government. By 1953, American and British intelligence agencies orchestrated a coup, threw him in prison, and consolidated power back to the US-friendly Shah. For Iranians, it was a heavy realization. Their sovereignty was entirely conditional on Western oil interests. Fast forward to the early 1970s, and the United States was facing its own crisis. The US dollar was originally backed by gold, but as foreign nations started cashing in their dollars, Washington realized it didn't have enough gold in the vault. President Nixon severed the tie, leaving the dollar vulnerable. This animated diagram shows the solution they engineered, the petrodollar system. The US struck a deal with Saudi Arabia and other OPEC nations. They agreed to price oil exclusively in dollars. In return, Washington provided military protection. By investing those dollars back into the US economy through treasury bonds and weapons, these nations created a permanent global demand for American currency. Keeping the Middle East stable and friendly became a strict requirement for American global supremacy. The Shah's Iran acted as a major pillar holding this entire arrangement together. That stability shattered in 1979. Millions of Iranians took to the streets, fueled by decades of resentment over the 1953 coup and the secret police. The monarchy collapsed, and Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile to establish an Islamic republic, pulling Iran entirely out of the American sphere of influence. The break became permanent months later when Iranian students stormed the US embassy in Tehran, taking dozens of diplomats hostage for over a year. Washington reacted by backing Saddam Hussein's invasion of Iran in 1980, hoping to force a regime change. The US provided Iraq with financial aid, weapons, and intelligence through a brutal 8-year war that cost 500,000 lives. Iran watched closely as the US later turned on Saddam Hussein and eventually Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, removing them from power by force. The Iranian leadership walked away with one defining conclusion: any state on America's hit list will fall unless it possesses an ultimate deterrent. To ensure its survival, Tehran built a two-part defense strategy. First, they established the axis of resistance. By funding and arming proxy groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and the Houthis in Yemen, Iran ensures that any fight with its enemies happens far beyond its own borders. Second, they initiated a covert uranium enrichment program. While Iran maintains the program is for energy and medical research, sites like the Natanz facility provide the technical foundation for a nuclear shield, viewed by Tehran as the only guarantee against a US invasion. Iran uses its proxy network and nuclear ambitions as highly calculated structural defense mechanisms. They are designed specifically to prevent external regime change. For a brief window, diplomacy actually seemed to work. In 2015, negotiators, including Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, signed the JCPOA. Iran agreed to freeze its nuclear capabilities in exchange for the lifting of crippling economic sanctions. But the progress collapsed when the Trump administration pulled the US out of the deal and returned to maximum pressure sanctions. With the agreement dead, Iran rapidly accelerated its uranium enrichment toward the 90% weapons-grade threshold. Instead of open diplomacy, the two nations locked into a shadow war. The US and Israel deployed the Stuxnet computer virus to disable Iranian facilities and utilized targeted drone strikes, like the one that killed General Qasem Soleimani, to cripple Iranian leadership without triggering an open invasion. This map shows why a ground invasion remains off the table. Iran covers a landmass 4 times the size of Iraq. It's a geographic fortress. The Zagros and Alborz mountain ranges form an impenetrable natural barrier, protecting the country from Western ground forces. We are left with a permanent geopolitical stalemate. Washington exerts relentless pressure to protect the petrodollar and its regional hegemony, while Tehran utilizes proxy warfare and nuclear brinkmanship as a non-negotiable survival strategy. These competing requirements have become the permanent architecture of the modern Middle East.